Andrew Jackson, right? He sent forces and he literally made the victory. He made it possible for America to own the mouth of the Mississippi River. You think about the War of 1812. The last battle was fought, I think, in 1815, the Battle of New Orleans, led by Wild Man Jackson, and he won and drove the British out of North America that way. So there's plenty of precedent of states sending like-minded capability to help each other out and to accomplish a desired common goal. The Pinkertons, Alan Pinkerton of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, detected an original, I think it was called the Gunpowder Plot, to assassinate Lincoln in like 1862. And so they took on a lot of that security and counterintelligence role during the Civil War. But then the Secret Service was formed supposedly as a side job to protect presidents. Because the biggest problem after the Civil War was counterfeiting. Counterfeiting of all this money. So that was the main job of the Secret Service or the Treasury. And they were assigned the executive protection role right before or right after Lincoln was assassinated. The thing is, wars start because of assassinations. World War I started when Archduke Francis Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated on a botched hit in Belgrade in 1914. They tried blowing up his car that morning. They missed. He was actually visiting in the hospital his wounded guys, leaving out of there, and the assassin saw his car going down the street without guards, stepped out with a pistol and shot him. That started World War I, which killed millions of people, rewrote the map of Europe. Imagine America today if they'd assassinated Donald Trump. Would we be in a civil war? Maybe, maybe not. Would there be high likelihood of violence? Yes. Think about how the American West was settled. And I hate to sound like the constant spokesman for the private sector, but it's just fact. The American West, post-Civil War Wild West, it was not settled by the U.S. Army or even by the U.S. Marshals. Most of the law enforcement was done by private organizations, by the Pinkertons and those kind of things, because you had the Pony Express, which was the way people communicated, sent mail or packages. You had the railroads, you had banks. They were just getting robbed by large gangs. And it was not, the government lacked the resources and the focus really to run those gangs down and to extinguish them. And you can see that in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that old Robert Redford movie. They would rob and pillage, go everywhere, and the sheriff would always stop at the county line, and the marshal would stop at this line, the army would stop at this border. But there's other guys that just chased them and chased them and chased them. They kept looking back. Who are those guys? It was the Pinkertons. So at that point, the Pinkerton Detective Agency had like 6 times the amount of armed agents that the Army did.
Really?
So again, nature hates a vacuum. Something's going to fill it. And I think one of the real problems with the federal government, particularly with the Senate, happened when back in the progressive era, in the 19-teens, like 110 years ago, when they passed an amendment which took away, it used to be that the state legislatures would elect the senators, U.S. senators. But then they changed it to be direct election. So now you're voting from Tennessee to send your senator on. The problem with that is it allows money from not Tennessee, but from everywhere to flood into Tennessee's election to affect how that senator is elected, instead of that senator that goes to represent Tennessee be beholden to Tennessee's interests and the state legislature who elected him telling him what to do. It was a brilliant move by the Founding Fathers, terrible move by the progressives, the super leftists in the Woodrow Wilson era, to change that. And it allowed greater concentration of federal power. Again, when they passed the income tax. Because before that, it used to be that the federal government was run solely off of tariffs. Every imported good would get nicked with a 15% tariff, gives a certain amount of protection to domestic industry, but not unreasonable. That was it. And it capped the size of government because you're never going to grow that tax base that much more. So you've had a massive concentration of federal power, service protections, so you have a bureaucracy that's been growing steadily. At the same time, a fiat currency that Congress can just print an unlimited amount of. Budget deficit, an extra $1 trillion, So what? We spend an extra $1 trillion. That's their mentality, which has allowed the worst aspects of federal bureaucracy and idiocy funded with really unlimited money. You see that in the wars that have been funded, 20-year war in Afghanistan, total fail, because there was never a guns or butter decision that some politician had to make. Are we going to fund healthcare or roads, or are we going to fund a failed war in Afghanistan? No one had to make that adult decision. It's always been much worse. America's been far worse off before. American Civil War, 600,000 people dead. Even after World War I, there was millions of people died of Spanish flu, actual flu that killed lots of people, killed them, not the nonsense that was COVID. The Great Depression, serious economic hardships, actual starvation in parts of America. So, yeah, we've got some issues now, but it's fixable. The socialist or the communist paradigm is really about control and subjecting yourself to a government elite, a party elite, determining what is best for your life, versus the paradigm of freedom, of individual liberty and choice, for that you make those changes to organize your life in the way that you want to choose. That clash has been ongoing for millennia. And I would always choose the side of freedom. Let me end with a motivating story. My favorite story from the American Revolution, Samuel Whitmore. He was 78 years old in April of 1775. He's a military veteran of the French and Indian Wars. And he hears the British soldiers marching by to go attack his buddies, the Patriots, at Lexington and Concord. Old Samuel Whitmore, at 78 years old, goes and guns himself up, loads his two pistols and his musket, and he goes out and he single-handedly attacks the British marching by. He kills 3 British soldiers. He draws his sword, which doesn't need reloading, and he attacks. The British overwhelm him. They shoot him in the face. They bayonet him 6 times. When the Patriots found him an hour later, he was trying to reload. He lived for 18 more years.
Wow.
So it's a great example. However old you are never too old to be out of the fight.